Welcome to Module 2 of the North Carolina Governor's Crime Commission Grant Training. The information in this training was developed by the Governor's Crime Commission Crime Victim Service Planning Team in consultation with the Juvenile Justice and Criminal Justice Improvement Planning Teams. The information in this training applies to all GCC grant applications. Let's take a look at the information we will cover in this module. By the end of the module, you should be able to access the Governor's Crime Commission's online requests for applications, or RFAs. Use the appropriate RFA or other GCC resources to set up your project, and complete and submit your application using the Grant Enterprise Management System, also known as GEMS. There are 2 lessons in this module. Lesson 1 provides an overview of GCC's RFA format and describes how and when to access grant application information through the GCC website. Lesson 2 demonstrates how to set up your project in GEMS and provide guidance on completing and submitting your application. Let's get started with Lesson 1. Welcome to Lesson 1, GCC Request for Applications. A request for application, or RFA, is a type of solicitation notice in which an organization announces that grant funding is available. GCC awards state and federal grants annually to law enforcement, governmental bodies, and nonprofit agencies in North Carolina for a variety of criminal justice and victim service projects. GCC hosts grant writing workshops prior to the release of the RFAs. GCC planning teams are available to assist with any questions you may have about the application process. In Lesson 1, we will describe the RFAs available and show you how to access them. Next, we will do a brief overview of the document to get a general overview of the application and requirements. Finally, we will discuss resources developed by the Governor's Crime Commission planning and grant management teams to assist interested applicants when applying for available funding. All GCC grant programs support the mission of the Governor's Crime Commission. The mission of the Governor's Crime Commission is to improve the quality of life for citizens of the state, to enhance public safety, and to reduce and prevent crime by improving the criminal justice system. GCC administers federal block grants for criminal justice, juvenile justice, and victim service programs in North Carolina. The Commission awards millions of dollars in grants each year and assures the funding is dispersed according to federal and state regulations during the life of the grants. The grants are awarded to government, education, and social service agencies for innovative programs in the following 3 planning areas: Crime Victim Service Planning, which includes the Victim of Crime Act and also known as VOCA, and the Violence Against Women Act, also known as VAWA or STOP. Criminal Justice and System Improvement Planning through the Byron Justice Assistant Grant, or JAG. And finally, Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, also known as JJ. The Governor's Crime Commission will begin accepting applications under these programs beginning November 1st. Once open, applicants can gain access to RFAs by visiting the Grant Application Portal on the GCC website. Applying agencies must be a unit of government or a nonprofit corporation and have created an active NCID that will be linked to the application. It is important to note that GCC operates on a reimbursement basis, so agencies must have sufficient operating funds in place to cover a minimum of 60 days. Additionally, risk assessments of some agencies may be required in order to determine if internal policies and procedures are adequate to manage federal or state grant funds. Applying agencies should have a thorough understanding of the RFA and what will be required before beginning the application. It is highly recommended that applicants read the RFA in its entirety prior to beginning the application process. The GCC website provides resources that can assist with the application, including an overview of the grant process, forms, access to GEMS, recordings of the grant writing workshops, and contact information for planning staff. Applicants should feel free to reach out to planning staff with questions at any time. Click on the link to explore the GCC Resources section. The next section of Lesson 1 will provide an overview of the general characteristics of GCC RFA. This overview is intended to provide applicants with a general understanding of the document. Please note that each program has its own separate RFA with different information, requirements, and dates. Applicants should make sure that they have an understanding of the specific program and have read the full RFA before applying. Page 1 of the RFA provides important details about the grant program and application process. The name of the grant program is listed at the top of the page. This is followed by the section listing important dates including application period, application deadline, and the grant project period of performance. The period of performance is the period during which the grantee is expected to complete the grant activities and to incur and expend approved funds. Applicants will also find other important information on page 1, such as the CFDA number, which is used to identify the funding source, and some basic eligibility information about the grant. Page 2 of the RFA provides information about the grant program. You will also find contact information for planning staff. Contact the planning staff with questions about the application process or to request assistance with developing your proposal. Some grant programs have a frequently asked question document. This document is a useful resource and provides information on common questions related to the RFA and application process. Responses to submitted questions are compiled and made available on the Governor's Crime Commission website. Page 3 of the RFA provides a table of contents for the RFA. The table of contents provides titles and starting page numbers for each section. Applicants should read and review all sections listed in the table of contents in order to ensure that they have a general understanding of the program, including funding priorities, eligibility, funding caps, and growth limits. Remember, for the best chance of success, always read and then reread the RFA. Each RFA will include a checklist of supporting documents that are required to be submitted with the application. RFAs will provide instructions on where to find the required forms, sample forms, and how to number and label each attachment. Applicants will need to prepare and upload these documents as attachments into their application in GEMS. Missing attachments could impact your application's ability to continue through the review process. In Module 1, you'll learn what credentials are needed to gain access to the Grant Enterprise Management System, also known as GEMS. GEMS is the GCC's online grant application submission and grant project management system for all GCC grants. Applicants will need to have access to this system in order to access and submit the application. Applicants can gain access to GEMS directly from the GCC website. In Lesson 2, you'll receive instructions on how to access and set up your project application in GEMS. This includes adding all required information and attachments that are needed to support your application. Finally, we will go over and review submitting your completed application using the RFA and other GCC resources as a guide along the way. The Governor's Crime Commission accepts application via GEMS between November 1st and January 31st annually. Each person working on the grant in GEMS and the official who will approve the grant are required to have active NCID credentials that will be used to gain access to the Grant Enterprise Management System, where the application will be submitted. If assistance or technical support is needed to gain access to NCID or GEMS, use the help resource provided on the login screen. After logging into GEMS, the first step of setting up your project is setting your user and organization profiles. You will need to request an organization role and have this role approved by the organization administrator. Role requests and approval are covered in Grant Writing Module 1 Pre-Award Requirements. Next, from the My Projects tab, you will add your project by clicking the green Add Project button located in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. This will open a new project and allow you to begin setup. In the first part of project setup, you will enter some basic organization information, including the name and a summary of your project. When naming your project, please utilize GCC naming conventions. Fields with a red asterisk indicate information is required. You will not be able to save and move forward if required fields are not completed. All applicants will need to choose a committee and a priority for their project. In GEMS, you'll be able to click on the blue info icon next to the program priority name in order to view description of the priorities offered. Finally, you will need to select 3 officials that will be active on your project. In order to appear in the drop-down menus, officials must have an active NCID and must have had their access and role approved by the organization administrator. If an official is not listed in the drop-down menu, they may need to either request project access or request a role. This multi-step process for adding officials is a great reason to get an early start in your application. You want to make sure there is ample time to get each official set up and approved. After you complete each section of the project setup, always press the blue Save button to ensure your data is added to the project. In the next step, you will add the implementing agency. For larger organizations, the implementing agency may be different than the subrecipient agency. The subrecipient agency is the overall organization. The implementing agency is a subunit or office within the subrecipient agency. For smaller organizations, the subrecipient agency and the implementing agency will most likely be the same. The implementing agency is the subunit or office responsible for the overall management of the actions that will result in delivery of services agreed upon in the grant. Entering the implementing agency by selecting your organization from the drop-down list or by using the green button to add a new implementing agency. Note, if you cannot find your agency in the drop-down list, you should contact the GCC planning staff to find out if your agency is listed under another name. Next, you'll complete the general information, abstract and narrative, goals, and objectives section. The project summary and abstract and narrative should explain the problem that the project will address in detail. Applicants should provide consistent details and evidence to support their request of funding. These discussions should focus on how the project will meet the needs of your area. For the goals and objectives section, you will provide 1 or 2 goals for your project and describe 2 objectives for each goal. The goal and objective should explain the purpose of your project and how this purpose will be accomplished. The section for indirect costs must be completed by the financial officer of the organization and cannot be saved or submitted otherwise. Indirect costs are costs that are not directly accounted for in the project and should be decided at the agency level, not at the project level. These costs may be either fixed or variable and include administration, personnel, and security expenses. Additional documentation is required if option 2 or option 3 is selected. Applicants will be prompted to upload this documentation. Applicants are expected to provide detailed information regarding the project in each of these sections. Remember that the RFA and other resources are available via the GCC website to provide guidance in each of these areas. Supporting documentation will need to be uploaded in the attachment section of your project. The documents should be named according to the attachment number and the description provided in the RFA. If a document is not required or is not applicable to the applicant must still upload an attachment and include the attachment number and description. The attachment should not be blank, but should indicate NA, not applicable, or not required, and provide a brief description. Attachments are required at the time of submission. Failure to upload required attachments could result in your project not being considered for funding. Applicants may refer to the project overview to ensure that all required sections have been addressed. This section will be read and will display items that are missing and must be completed before the application can be submitted. When all areas of the application have been addressed and all attachments have been uploaded, the project overview will change to green, and an email will be sent to each official that the application is ready to be reviewed by the official. Each official must review and approve the application inside of GEMS. It is crucial that all officials review the project well before January 31st to ensure that there's adequate time to make necessary adjustments to the project. and in case the user requires assistance from GCC for issues related to system access, NCID, or other technical issues that could arise. Once the application has been completed and reviewed, applicants should compare the completed application with the RFA to ensure that all necessary information has been included in the application. Applicants should consult the FAQs on the GCC website or contact the GCC office with any final questions. Remember, it's important to start your application early to allow adequate time for questions, guidance, and technical support. When you're satisfied that your application meets the requirements of the RFA, submit your application through GEMS. Be sure to review sections 6 and 7 of the RFA in order to be prepared for potential next steps should you be awarded the grant. These sections provide information on post-award requirements for grant recipients. The Grant Award Calendar provides information on the grant review and approval process. Applications that pass the preliminary review phase are sent to GCC committee for reviews and scoring. There are typically 3 reviewers per application. The average score of the reviewer determines the project score. Applications are ranked in score order by priority. In May, the committees will discuss and score projects, make recommendations for project or priority specific adjustments, and vote on priorities. In June, the full commission reviews and approves the projects, and the GCC staff begin notifying applicants of the outcome of their application review. Approval and declination letters will be sent out to applicants at this time. Applicants may receive notification of required modifications. Applicants must make these adjustments to the application in GEMS. Once the changes have been approved by the GCC staff, the project opening process can begin. All projects except juvenile justice projects open on October 1st. Juvenile justice projects open January 1st. Once the project period opens, grantees may begin submitting reimbursement requests. Additional information about application review process can be found by clicking on the resource link in the top right corner of the player. The next session of the module will summarize the information covered in Lessons 1 and 2. In Lesson 1 of this module, you learned how to use the GCC website to access RFA and resources to assist you with completing your application. You learned that the Governor's Crime Commission RFAs provide detailed information about grant funding, eligibility, and applicant requirements. Remember to mark your calendars and get an early start on the application process. You also learned that GCC utilizes an online application process, and applicants will need to provide supporting documentation electronically. There are simple forms available on GCC's website to assist applicants who may be developing some of these documents for the first time. Finally, you learned what to do if you have questions when reviewing the RFA and during the process of completing the application. The GCC website provides a frequently asked question document and other resources to help applicants to be successful in the application process. Applicants can find contact information for program staff in the initial pages of the RFA, and general contact information for the Governor's Crime Commission is available on the GCC website.